master's degree. You'd go through your master's degree in school psychology. Depending on what state you live in, you might have to get additional certifications and licensure and so forth. And you would be restricted, obviously, in terms of only working with schools. But the median annual salary of school psychologists is around $78,000. What is up, fam? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Phil Sarpon. This is Phil's Guide to PsyD. This channel is dedicated to all things psychology, wellness, and graduate school. Today we're going to be talking about some of the highest salaries, paid positions for master's level therapists. So not doctorate, not having a PhD or a PsyD or anything like that, but master's level therapists. What are some of the higher salary paid positions for those clinicians? If you have not already, please subscribe to the channel. You can hit the bell for notifications. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So I'm going to start with the lowest paid position. All right, so for number one, we have a clinical mental health counselor. So as we've talked about in previous videos, clinical mental health counselors could be licensed professional counselors. They could be licensed clinical social workers. They are someone who has a bachelor's degree and then gets an additional master's degree in counseling or maybe even marriage and family therapy. And so they would go through that master's degree, typically within 2 to 3 years. They'd get their hours for licensure and then they would become these master's level therapists. For the median annual salary of these clinicians, it is at $47,660. The next one is becoming a behavior analyst. Now, typically behavior analysts can work in hospitals, they can work in schools. They also typically would go through a bachelor's program and a master's program to become a behavior analyst. Now, the salary range for behavior analysts go from $70,000 to $75,000 in terms of the average salary range. All right, so number 3 on the list is going to be school psychologist. I have done previous videos about school psychologists, so you can actually become a psychologist with a master's degree if you specialize in school psychology. Again, you'd go through your bachelor's degree, you'd go through your master's degree in school psychology. Depending on what state you live in, you might have to get additional certifications and licensure and so forth. And you would be restricted, obviously, in terms of only working with schools. But the median annual salary of school psychologists is around $78,000. Next up we have on the list are going to be industrial organizational psychologists. So now industrial organizational psychologist is another form of psychology where you can become a psychologist with only a master's degree. Again, this is not the case typically for clinical psychologists, neuropsychologist, pediatric psychologist. Typically all of those specialties require a doctorate, whether in counseling psychology PhD or clinical psychology PhD or PsyD. But for this one, you can become an industrial organizational psychologist with a master's degree. You get your bachelor's degree and then you go into a master's degree that is specifically focused on industrial organizational psychology. Now, in this type of field, typically they don't necessarily focus too much on therapy and on therapeutic practices. They're focusing way more on obviously working in more of a human resources position where you might do research, you might do classes and teaching and presentations. And so they're really focused on the quality of work that employees can produce and also on the management side of things for managers and people in higher up positions. Typically for industrial organizational psychologists, they might be in full-time positions, but they also may be in part-time positions or contract work positions. And so the salary range for these positions is really, really broad and general, but typically it could be around $96,720. Finally, the last 2 positions, you may not necessarily think of it primarily in the role of mental health, but they do have a lot to do with mental health. The next one is going to be a health services manager. Now, what a health services manager can do, it's going to look like a lot of different things depending on the role and the job. Typically, these are people who aren't clinicians, so they're not doing therapy, they're not doing any type of therapeutic practices with patients or anything like that. They typically have a bachelor's degree, and then they get their master's degree in something more along the lines of health administration or health management, maybe public policy or public health. And then after that master's degree, they go into clinical settings where maybe they go into a hospital or they go into a community health setting. And they are pretty much the ones that are administrating some of the behind the scenes of regulating different schedules for clinicians, hiring on different practitioners and clinicians, figuring out some of the financial responsibilities of the practice, if it's a medical practice or a private practice. Now, becoming a health services manager could earn you about $104,000 and $280. Now, even though healthcare administrators do get paid really well, the job can be stressful. Oftentimes, healthcare administrators are on call, and so they do have to work long days and on weekends as well. And you're also busy really managing people and some of the behind the scenes that happen with healthcare administration. So it definitely can be stressful, but it is a really great job in terms of getting a master's degree and getting paid adequately for the work that you do. Finally, we come to human resources manager, which is very similar to a healthcare administrator or a health services manager. Health resources manager is someone that's going to be essentially managing the whole department of human resources. If you've ever been in a job where there is a human resources department, typically there's a human resources manager that is overseeing all of the different factors and protocols that human resources will do, and also addressing some of the issues that are brought up in human resources from employees or from other service managers. And this is a really important job. This is a job where you are going to have to implement some psychological skills. You're going to have to really implement some people service skill type level administration, but it can also be very rewarding from a salary perspective, but also that you really only need like a master's degree in order to get into this type of field. The salary for a human resources manager goes up to $121,000 a year, and for certain companies or hospitals or clinics or organizations in general, it can even be much higher than that. If you all have any questions, please put it down in the comment section below. If you have not already, please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.